Today, getting lost is almost impossible. No matter where we go, Google Maps is there to guide us. Traveling is effortless, with digital maps showing every turn. But what if you lived in ancient Rome? No GPS, no street signs, yet they conquered and explored vast lands. So, how did they do it? Their secrets might just change the way you see history. Well, their secret wasn't magic. It was their roads. The Romans were relentless travelers, always on the move, and their roads were nothing short of revolutionary. Unlike the rough, unreliable paths of earlier civilizations, Roman roads were built to last. They connected cities, empires, and military outposts with an efficiency that was unheard of at the time. These weren't just dirt tracks, they were engineering marvels designed for speed, durability, and organization. But where did they get their knowledge? The Romans didn't invent road building from scratch. They were experts at borrowing and improving. The Egyptians mastered surveying. The Greeks excelled at masonry. The Etruscans perfected cement making, and the Cretans developed paving techniques. The Romans took all of these innovations, combined them, and then added something game-changing: drainage ditches. This single addition ensured that their roads remained usable in all weather conditions, making them far superior to anything that had come before. The result? A vast, interconnected web of roads that stretched across Europe, facilitating trade, military movements, and communication. These roads were so well built that some are still in use today. To keep travelers on track, massive stone milestones, over 8 feet tall, were placed on every Roman mile, about 4,800 feet. Roman roads weren't just about getting from point A to B. They were carefully designed with pedestrians, horsemen, and travelers in mind. These milestones placed at regular intervals didn't just mark distances. They honored the emperors or officials responsible for the road's construction or repair. And convenience, the Romans thought of everything. Wide enough for massive wagons to pass without issue, these roads also had footpaths, resting spots by the milestones, and even stone blocks to help horsemen mount and dismount with ease. Springs along the way, perfect places for fountains and watering troughs for animals. But here's the most incredible part. Some of these roads lasted for hundreds of years without repairs. Thanks to their strategic design, cutting through hills, spanning valleys with viaducts, and crossing rivers on solid stone arches, they were built to endure. Picture yourself in ancient Rome, where movement was power and roads were the empire's lifeline. Among them, one road stood above all: the Appian Way, the queen of the long roads. But what made it so special? Built in the 4th century BC, under Appius Claudius, this road was more than just a path. It was a statement of Roman dominance. Stretching over 200 miles to the Adriatic coast, it allowed armies to march, merchants to trade, and ideas to spread. But here's the real question. How did it survive centuries of use without crumbling? The Romans perfected road building with precision engineering. They didn't just lay stones. They fitted them so tightly that the road became a single, solid surface. No mortar, no metal fastenings, just expert craftsmanship. Even after thousands of carts, soldiers, and traders passed over it, the stones barely shifted. More than just a road, the Appian Way was a game changer. It connected Rome to the world, fueling its economy and military might. It was so vital that Emperor Augustus even ordered a map of the empire's roads to be displayed in the Forum. Without roads like these, would Rome have been able to rule the known world? And without their influence, would our modern highways even exist? But let's be real, apart from the milestones situated at different junctions, the Romans actually had a more efficient way to ensure they were on track to their destination. So how? They had their own version of a travel guide, the Itinerarium Antonini. This 4th century travel guide listed every major Roman road, along with towns, lodgings, and distances between them. This wasn't just any map, it was a practical tool. Much like how we rely on subway maps or highway exit guides today, travelers could jot down specific distances and stopping points, ensuring they never lost their way. In a way, it was the ancient world's equivalent of a GPS voice telling you, in 20 miles, stop at the next town for a bath and a warm meal. Rome's road network was nothing short of extraordinary. At its peak, 29 major highways spread out from the capital. linking 113 provinces with over 250,000 miles of roads, 50,000 of them paved in stone. These roads weren't just for convenience, they revolutionized communication, trade, and military movement. A courier on horseback could travel up to 75 miles a day, a remarkable feat for the time. But can you even imagine trying to build a road without modern machines, GPS, or satellite images? How would you even begin? The Romans had an answer: careful planning and brilliant engineering. Before a single stone was laid, Roman engineers studied the land, consulted locals, and mapped out the most efficient route. Straight roads were the goal. After all, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But what about hills and mountains? The Romans weren't deterred. They carved through rocky cliffs, built towering bridges, and even constructed tunnels when necessary. In winding mountain passes, they designed gentle curves to make travel easier. And here's a clever trick. Whenever possible, they built roads on sunny slopes to keep them clear of snow in winter. Think about that level of detail. Have you ever considered how much planning goes into the roads we use every day? The Romans did, and their roads lasted for centuries. But have you ever wondered how detailed the Romans built roads so durable they lasted for centuries? You see, after they were done with careful planning, engineers used a surveying tool called the groma to map out the straightest possible path, clearing terrain and digging down to solid ground. Once they reached a stable layer, workers laid down boulders to form a strong foundation. Then came a layer of sand or gravel, creating a smoother surface for travelers, whether on foot, horseback, or wagon. But not every road got the luxury of paving stones. Only those in cities or on unstable ground were reinforced with stone slabs and curbs. But travel wasn't exactly comfortable. Traveling on these roads was slow and exhausting. A journey from Rome to Naples, a trip that today takes about 2 hours by car, could take over 7 days in Roman times. No smooth highways, just bumpy stone roads, wooden carts, and sore feet. One of the most famous routes, like Spain's Via Augusta, stretched from Cadiz to the Pyrenees, eventually connecting to the Via Domitia, which led straight to Rome. The saying, "all roads lead to Rome," wasn't just a metaphor, it was a reality. But with travel being this slow and exhausting, would you have been up for the journey? So you see, in all sense, traveling in ancient Rome wasn't as simple as hailing a cab or booking a flight. These Romans actually needed a passport just to use official roads. Without street signs or numbered addresses, navigation relied on memory, landmarks, and local knowledge. Yet, the Romans had an incredibly efficient system. Messengers on horseback could cover 200 miles a day by switching horses every 10 miles, making it possible to reach Britain from Rome in just 6 days. That record wasn't broken until the invention of modern cars. But how did the average Roman travel? Well, if you were taking a bus, you'd hop into a raider, a 4-wheeled, ironclad carriage packed with wooden benches and pulled by up to 4 horses or mules. Not exactly first-class comfort, but it got the job done. Luggage restrictions? Oh yes, Roman law limited baggage to 300 kilograms, just like airline weight limits today. For the wealthy, luxury came in the form of the carpentum. Think of it as the Roman limousine, with multiple horses, a wooden arched roof, cushioned seats, and even early suspension for a smoother ride. It was a status symbol, on wheels. And then there was the plaustrum, the Roman version of a freight truck. This slow, heavy-duty cart, pulled by oxen, crept along at just 10 to 15 miles per day. Can you imagine waiting weeks for your furniture to arrive? So, Roman travel wasn't exactly a smooth ride, literally. Their carriages, with iron-shod wheels, clattered so loudly that they were banned from big cities during the day. And comfort? Forget it. Without suspension, every bump in the road was a jolt, making long trips, like the journey from Rome to Naples, an endurance test. But even ancient Romans needed a break from the road, which led to the development of mansiones, basically the Roman version of highway rest stops. These way stations, built by the government, were spaced about 15 to 20 miles apart and offered food, drink, and a place to sleep. Sounds convenient, right? Well, not always. These stops had a reputation for being sketchy, often crawling with thieves and prostitutes. And just like today's highways, Roman roads had tolls. These were typically found at bridges or city gates, ensuring that travelers paid their dues before continuing their journey. Unfortunately, though, the Roman road network began crumbling after a century of civil wars, but Emperor Augustus wasn't about to let that stand. He took matters into his own hands, personally overseeing repairs and setting up a system to ensure roads remained in top shape. In 20 BC, he appointed magistrates called curatores viarum, essentially road managers who handled contracts, supervised construction, and ensured maintenance was carried out. But who paid for all this? Taxes, tolls, and even wealthy patrons like Emperor Trajan, who funded the Via Traiana, which eventually replaced the famous Appian Way. Even cities along the route were required to chip in. But how do we even know where these ancient roads were? Believe it or not, one big clue comes from Roman footwear. Soldiers, farmers, and traders wore caligae, leather shoes with metal studs on the soles for extra durability. Over time, these studs would break off and get embedded in the roads, tiny metal time capsules, helping modern archaeologists confirm the routes of these once mighty highways. The Romans didn't just master the land, they ruled the seas too. But how did they build ships to travel without modern engineering? Unlike today's high-tech shipyards, Roman shipbuilding was more of an art than a science. There were no blueprints or computer models, just inherited techniques, personal experience, and a lot of trial and error. The Romans weren't natural sailors, they were land-focused conquerors. But when they clashed with seafaring civilizations like the Carthaginians, Greeks, and Egyptians, they learned fast. Ancient texts and shipwrecks reveal fascinating details about Roman shipbuilding. Early on, planks were literally sewn together. Later, they used the mortise and tenon technique, slots and pegs that locked planks in place, like a giant wooden puzzle. But by the 1st century CE, they had revolutionized shipbuilding by constructing the frame first, then adding the hull, a method still used today. This shift drastically cut construction time, allowing Rome to build fleets faster than ever. Traveling by sea in ancient Rome had its perks. It was cheap and could cover long distances, but it was also slow and unpredictable, especially in winter when storms made voyages dangerous. The Romans relied on sailing vessels and riverboats to transport goods and people, but unlike today, there were no organized transportation companies with fixed schedules or ticket prices. You would actually be prepared to travel, but have no idea when the next ship would leave. Passengers had to wait at the port, hoping to find a boat heading in their direction, then negotiate a price with the captain, often with no guarantee of comfort or safety. But then, navigating the seas in ancient Rome was nothing like the high-tech systems we rely on today. No GPS, no compasses, just sharp eyes, handed down knowledge, and a deep understanding of nature. But how did they manage to cross vast distances without getting hopelessly lost? For many Roman sailors, the key was sticking close to the coast. As long as they could see land, they had familiar landmarks to guide them. They relied on detailed sailing directions, known as periploi in Greek, which described routes, coastal features, and safe harbors. Initially, these guides covered only Mediterranean routes, but by 50 CE, they included journeys stretching from Atlantic Europe to North Africa, India, and beyond. They also relied on the stars, the sun, and even the wind. The pole star, which remains nearly fixed in the night sky, was a key reference point. At noon, they estimated direction based on the sun's position. When that wasn't possible, they paid attention to the wind and ocean swells to guide them. Much of this knowledge came from the Phoenicians, legendary seafarers who had mastered celestial navigation long before the Romans. Pliny the Elder credited them with applying Chaldean astronomical knowledge to sea travel. They were among the first to realize that Ursa Minor, a constellation circling the celestial North Pole more tightly than Ursa Major, provided a more precise guide to true north. Can you even imagine Aegine setting sail with nothing but the stars above, the waves below, and a scroll of handwritten directions? Would you have dared to explore the unknown? Also, rowing a massive Roman ship wasn't just about strength. It was about rhythm, with about hundreds of rowers, each with an oar, trying to move in perfect unison. How did they stay in sync? A musician played a wind instrument, setting the beat for their strokes, much like a modern drumline keeping soldiers in step. But rowing wasn't the only challenge. Roman sailors had to master the unpredictable Mediterranean winds, adjusting sails with precision to navigate safely. The Mediterranean was the Roman Empire's highway, bustling with merchant ships carrying goods from every corner of the known world. But have you ever wondered how Rome, a city of nearly 1 million people, managed to stay supplied without modern transportation? The answer lies in its well-organized sea routes, which connected the empire's farthest provinces to its ports. The port of Pozzuoli, near Naples, and the massive port of Ostia, at the mouth of the Tiber River, were the empire's main entry points for imported goods. Each year, around 1,200 merchant vessels, some weighing up to 350 tons, arrived in Ostia alone, roughly 5 per navigable day. Just like today, large ships couldn't dock directly, so smaller towboats pulled them to the quay. Merchant ships in ancient Rome were like the cargo trucks of the sea, designed for maximum storage rather than speed. Unlike the sleek, maneuverable warships built for battle, these massive vessels focused on stability and efficiency. But how exactly did they stay afloat while carrying tons of goods across the Mediterranean? With a length-to-breadth ratio of about 3:1, Roman merchant ships had deep V-shaped hulls, making them stable but unable to sail too close to the coast. To steer such a massive structure, they relied on 2 large side rudders at the stern, controlled by a system of cables connected to a tiller bar. This setup ensured they could navigate even in open waters. Most had 1 to 3 masts, with large square sails capturing the wind's power. At the bow, a small triangular sail called the superum helped with steering and balance. On average, a Roman merchant ship could haul between 100 to 150 tons of cargo, roughly the weight of 25 adult elephants. The smallest ones carried around 70 tons, while the largest could reach 600 tons and stretch 150 feet, 46 meters, long. These ships weren't just floating warehouses. They were also equipped with oarsmen, just like warships, to help navigate tricky waters when the wind wasn't in their favor. Their cargo was incredibly diverse. Grain from Egypt's Nile Valley, barrels of wine, olive oil, iron bars, copper, lead ingots, and massive blocks of marble and granite used for Rome's grand buildings. Amazingly, after the fall of the Roman Empire, shipbuilders didn't match the cargo capacity of Roman ships until the 16th century. That means for over 1,000 years, no one built merchant vessels as large and efficient as those used by the Romans. But sea travel wasn't always smooth sailing. The speed of a voyage depended on the winds, with ships averaging around 4 to 5 knots. A fast journey could reach 6 knots, meaning a trip from Ostia to Alexandria, Egypt, would take about 6 to 8 days. However, sailing from south to north or east to west was much slower due to unfavorable winds. And here's something surprising. Commercial navigation in the Mediterranean completely stopped for 4 months every winter. This period, known as Mare Clausum, the closed sea, was too dangerous for ships to travel. In all sense, traveling by sea in ancient Rome was no luxury cruise. It was often uncomfortable, unpredictable, and even dangerous. The boats were small, making them rough rides in bad weather, and without a compass to guide them, sailors had to hug the coastline, sometimes adding significant distance to their journey. Rather than risk the open sea, travelers often took a mix of land and water routes. For example, instead of sailing directly from Ostia or Naples to Athens, many opted to journey overland to Brundisium, then take a short 100-mile voyage across the Adriatic to Dyrrhachium, before continuing on foot or by carriage. This crossing usually took around 24 hours, unless bad weather delayed the trip. But bad weather wasn't the only danger at sea. Pirates were a constant threat, preying on merchant vessels and travelers alike. Shipwrecks were common, and without modern navigation or communication tools, a lost ship often meant lost lives. And then there were the Romans' fears of the unknown stories of sea monsters lurking in the deep, which made many uneasy about venturing too far from shore. Despite these challenges, the Romans were master innovators. They developed highly detailed ways to navigate using the stars, winds, and natural landmarks, a system so precise that it laid the foundation for later advancements in navigation, from the compass to modern GPS. It's fascinating to think that while today we rely on satellites to guide us, Ancient sailors used nothing more than their sharp eyes, skill set, and knowledge of the heavens to reach their destinations.